My name's Kenny. I'm with the Florida Veterans for Common Sense. I am amazed at this nice crowd that's here. Yes, give yourselves a round of applause because you're the most special people. Okay, I got other special people too. I'll let you be meeting them in a minute. I was also told to say, let's thank Hooligans for the food. They're over in Golf Gate. There's still more there, so you can go out and get some if you'd like, but we're asking you to go that way. No more walking in the front or the videographer gets upset. I won't mention his name, right, Dave? Okay. Before I go too far into the reality of what we're here for, it's a quick, everybody, happy birthday, Thomas Paine. I'll let people meet you in a little while. And we're going to start out a little bit because the first person I really like to recognize is the president of our organization, Gene Jones. And this is like, you've been the president for like 22 years or something. We really appreciate all the work you do is really fantastic. And he really couldn't do it all without the support of the people in this room. And those of you who are members, you can raise your hands. Not enough. Okay. You could easily become a member, do a little support. It doesn't cost very much unless you have a lot. Then you can give all you want and help the fund rolling along. I'd also like to recognize three people who probably don't want to be recognized, but they were the first time in 2011 that we had a Thomas Paine dinner. And I've been told that he even believes they've been here 100% of the times at every one of these. And if you please rise for just a moment, we'll give an applause to Joanne DeVries, Mary Klupper, Nancy Freehand. Come on in the corner, ladies. We are so proud of you 100%ers. And I can't go any further without saying also, I have a former mayor here, Susan Atwell. Susan, we are so happy you're here. And of course, nobody's going to forget about our former county commissioner and a Gulf Coast Foundation superstar, our own John Thaxton. Most of you know him, or at least you know the name. I was also told about Harvey Kay and his wife Lorna from Wisconsin. They came all the way in. He told me like in 2006, he believes, Gene talked him into coming down, got him a plane ride, got him a hotel, and he gave a sold-out speech. What was that speech about? Could have been Thomas Paine? Oh, now I'm not giving mine. That's it. I'm done now. Okay. Also, did Mike Pinder come tonight? Is Mike here? Haven't seen him? Shucks, what a great. He's been the accountant. He's been helping us for years and years and years, so we always had to like him. And, money, you got to like him. And last but not least, and I didn't even know this till today, there is a National Veterans for Common Sense. And the president is here today, sitting with his board member, Gene. That's Andy Hardy. So we thank you. Well, I shouldn't go any further than without saying that there's somebody walking around selling raffle tickets. And Doug would be mad at me if I didn't mention that. So if anybody's interested, there are some 50-50 raffle tickets. There will be one winner. And the biggest winner that we have tonight, of course, that's here is everybody. A round of applause for Thomas Paine. Thomas, could you please come up? For most of you know this, but some of you that don't, Thomas Paine was the fighter for equality, education, and most important for my life, women's rights. And we're talking about 1776, this man is doing that. He definitely has been one of the most influential figures in the American Revolution and the most important individual for the Florida Veterans for Common Sense. And if you haven't read his book, Common Sense, I borrowed Gene's book, so if anybody wants to borrow it, I do have it. Anyway, Thomas is celebrated for his writings that galvanized the colonies to seek independence from Britain. Beyond his role in inspiring political revolution, Paine was the early advocate for full equality, for public education, and for women's rights. Now, these ideas, they were radical in the 18th century, and they seem to be a little radical right now. But he laid the groundwork for a lot of later social progress. Paine's belief in equality stemmed from his deep commitment to justice and the inherent dignity of every individual. In his book, Common Sense, 1776, he argued that society should be organized around principles of fairness and equal opportunity, and rejecting the hereditary privilege and class stratification of the monarchies, or in this case, the billionaires. Paine's vision extended beyond politics. He believed that the success of a democratic society depended on the moral and intellectual equality of all citizens. This belief informed the advocacy for individual education, universal education, public education, which he saw as essential for empowering individuals to participate fully in self-governance. His writings consistently emphasize the need for public education in the systems to combat ignorance and ensure an informed and engaged populace. In The Rights of Man, which he wrote in 1791, Paine went further in articulating his vision of social equality. He advocated for the politics such as progressive taxation, for policies such as economic disparities. He also promoted welfare programs to aid the poor, the elderly, the disadvantaged, and recognized that a just society had to be responsible to uplift all of its members. While these ideas were primarily framed around class, Paine's commitment to equality transcended gender as well. Paine was, and this is 1791, Paine was ahead of his time in his views on women's rights, in an era when women were largely excluded from education and political participation. Paine expressed the need for gender equality. He championed these women's access to education, arguing that it was unjust to deny half the population the opportunity to develop their intellectual capacities. In his essay, An Occasional Letter on the Female Sex, Paine critiqued societal norms that relegated women to inferior roles, emphasizing their equal potential for reason and virtue. Although the writings on women's rights were less extensive than his political treatise, they reflected the broader commitment to challenging the systematic inequalities. In summary, Thomas Paine was not just a revolutionary in politics, but also in thought. His advocacy for equality, education, and women's rights has placed him among the most progressive thinkers of our time. Paine's legacy serves as a reminder of the enduring power of shaping a more just and equitable society. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Thomas Paine.
I'd like to thank the Veterans for Common Sense for having this event to honor my birthday, 288th. Not bad, huh? And also Tom Edwards, our new re-elected school board member, to carry on the education drive that I wrote about 240 years ago. And he's doing a great job at it. You know, one of the good things about being around the world like I have been, I ran across a time traveler who's brought me here to today. And these are again, unfortunately, these are again the time to try men's souls. We are again at a point in this country where a revolution is underway to get rid of authoritarian government that is trying to take over this democracy. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. Checks and balances are being destroyed, which is our gatekeeper for our democracy. So who knows? We may be at it again. And if we are, please call to arms in many ways, because we need to protect our democracy. Through the years, I've been against authoritarianism, separation of church and state, equality, abandon ignorance, deal with reason, not ignorance, by educating ourselves and finding the truth of what's out there on the things that we are fighting for. And I am a writer, I'm not a speaker. So Ken has done a great job talking about the things that I've done, but please keep in mind, we're on the verge of another revolution of some sort, and we've got to keep to our democracy. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Now, there are also some other special people I didn't want to mention till now, because I'm going to let Dennis Plews, one of our longtime members, come up to the stage if he would. Is he still? Oh, hey, it's good. And he's going to let us recognize some of those who have won the Thomas Paine Award in the past.
Well, thank you, Kenny. Hello, everybody. As Kenny mentioned, I'm Dennis Plews. I'm one of the 5 founders that this troublemaker down here started. That's why we made him president for life. He can't get away. We've got him. And Mike Burns. Little jet jockey type, you know, flights over Hanoi, et cetera, et cetera. Jeffrey's got 3 of the 3rd highest medal you can get for valor that our nation awards, 3 silver stars. Give Jeffrey a hand. He's a true American hero. There's several more, but considering the time, let me go to our Thomas Paine recipients. We've been doing this for a while, so we wanted to let everybody know who we, the Florida Veterans for Common Sense, have settled on as being a recipient of the award, which says that they represent and carry out the teachings of Thomas Paine in our nation. One of the things that Thomas Paine did was he supported the troops. As a matter of fact, if he hadn't given the speech to the troops that George Washington asked him to do at Valley Forge, we would have lost the war. That was it, we're done. So our first representative was somebody, also a veteran, who stood up on behalf of veterans when we needed to have special veterans treatment courts established. Oh, side note, the founders of the Florida Veterans for Common Sense, all of which are Vietnam combat guys, are also lawyers, every one of us. So we picked a judge for the first recipient, but he's a good one. Lee was lieutenant colonel or something like that, but when he was working with us, he was the chief judge of the circuit. Now, the circuit courts are 20 judicial circuits in Florida. Sarasota is one of 3 counties for the 12th Judicial Circuit, and Lee was the head honcho. And we went to Lee and said, we need to establish a veterans treatment court. Well, a couple other circuits around the state had already started, and Lee fired it up here. And we worked real hard for several years and finally got a bill passed through the legislature to establish veterans treatment courts for returning veterans who are having basically PTSD issues when they get home and they get in trouble with the law. So Lee Hayworth was our first recipient. I don't know if he's got any medals, probably. Next came Waldo Prophet. He was the editor of the Sarasota Herald Tribune, and he was a newspaper guy like Thomas Paine, who was always out there on the path of democracy. He was the second recipient of that now somewhat prestigious recognition, the Thomas Paine Award, for his work on running the Sarasota paper, being the editor. Following him is another newsman, WSLR's head founder, actually, and head news commentator, Rob Lorai. Now, I've stayed in touch with Rob, and he can't be here tonight because he lives north of Tampa, and it's raining out, and he didn't want to drive 80 miles down and 80 miles back. But anyway, Rob was our third recipient for all the public publicity he would give on behalf of democracy and veterans in our nation. So he was number 3. Following him was Bob Rosinski. You've heard of Goodwill, Minnesota. He runs Goodwill, Minnesota, and he's been instrumental in serving the needs of the veterans community, particularly homeless veterans in our area. So Bob Rosinski, executive director of Goodwill, Minnesota, because of the support he gave to veterans in the military, was our 4th. He was our recipient in 2015. Now we got this crazy old broad who had to hike all the way from Sarasota to Tallahassee to make a point. Rana Bazzini. Rana, stand up. Woo, Rana, yay, Rana. That is one tough bird, let me tell you. Rana marched all the way, to, as I said, to raise awareness on the need for campaign reform. And it's been an ongoing battle as the Superman line for truth, justice, and the American way. Because, well, people, not everyone's a good person. So we have to keep our eyes on them, as Thomas Paine Award told us about. So Rana was a Thomas Paine Award recipient on the substantial and unusual work she did to publicize the need for making sure our politics are straight up and down, no crooks. Following Rana was, unfortunately, she's no longer with us, no longer in Sarasota. I've known Arlene for a long time. Arlene Sweeting. Again, again in the spirit of Thomas Paine, through her radio WSLR and the work here, and her work for Peace and Justice, the foundation she was instrumental in. She was that type of person who worked for the democracy, for equal rights, and for truth and justice in politics. So she was the next one. Then, I don't know about you guys, but some of you have probably heard that there's sexual abuse in the military. Who'd have thunk it? Nancy Parrish, a soldier, a military person, founded Protect Our Defenders. Yeah, let's hear it for her. Let's hear it for her. Is she over here? All right, she's here with us tonight. Give that woman a round of applause because she's a hero. Just don't mess with soldiers, they will get you. And she did. Protect Our Defenders was probably one of the first organizations that spoke out loudly against the abuse women had to put up with from fellow soldiers while on active duty, and moreover, the lack of attention that was given to those incidents by command. Fortunately, that's getting better, and it's because of Nancy's work. So when you see that sort of stuff going on, think of people like Nancy, because they're the ones giving us the strength to say, no, we won't have that in our society. Another newspaper type person who did enough yammering about democracy in public space to get our attention, and to the extent that he was emulating the words of Thomas Paine and the messages of Thomas Paine, was Tom Walker. He was chairman of the board of WSLR. Hey, Tom. There he is. Everybody say hi, Tom. Again, he was in the vein of Thomas Paine, keeping the people informed about what they need to know to make sure that the government stays on the straight and narrow. Following Tom, and in the vein of supporting the troops, Desmond Meade was a voting rights, he got the 2019 award. And he's the recipient in 2019. Our executive director of Florida Rights Restoration Coalition. You may remember when we gave convicted felons the right to return to the ballot box once they'd completed all the terms and conditions of their sentence. Before, you had to go back to court and get a judge to reinstate your voting right. It was a pain in the neck. But now it's automatic due to the work of Desmond Meade. So thank you, Desmond. Now another local troublemaker here, Kendra Muntz. Are you in here, Kendra? She's not here tonight? Oh, darn. Kendra's another local lady. It figures we're here. We see people around us. Oh, that'd be a good one. This is not magic. We look for those people who, again, embody the spirit of Thomas Paine. And Kendra Muntz, President Alliance for Fair Elections. In 2020, she was our recipient. Back, you may remember when we had the touchscreen voting nonsense going on in Sarasota, and a lot of the machines were not registering votes right, et cetera, et cetera. So she was one of the people that screamed and hollered enough so we don't have to deal with that crap anymore. So we have now paper ballots that are scanned in by a computer. And being familiar with people who are in charge of that stuff, I can tell you, there's almost no way to rig the vote around here. Now, you can do it, I suppose, but it ain't easy. And Kendra Muntz was the recipient for her work in keeping the elections as fair as possible, and that was in 2020. Now, you may remember when this person who occupies the White House had a little talk with a guy over in Eastern Europe having some trouble with the Russians. And he wanted the president of Ukraine to sort of grease his palm in order to receive some supporting military materials. And somebody blew the whistle on him. Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman. No, we're not biased in favor of military people. We're just former military people ourselves. So we see them. And when a lieutenant colonel stands up and points the finger at the then president of the United States and reveals the criminality he was up to at the time, that takes courage. And he's paid some price, not a light price. He got slapped around a little bit by El Presidente. And he and his twin, also another colonel, also got some crap out of that. So that's the kind of courage we look for in people whom we honor for their work with the Thomas Paine Award. Following up, in 2022, Matthew Ho, a peace activist, spent years in the Marine Corps. Yeah, we like Marines, they're okay. I'm Army, I'm a dog face, I know leathernecks. He's a flyboy. We got flyboys around here, and we got some squids. For those of you who don't know, squids are Navy, leathernecks are Marines, dog faces are Army, and flyboys are Air Force. So, Matthew Ho, a Marine, 3 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. The reason Florida Veterans for Common Sense exists is because that guy turned to me over at that park, right there on 41, and said, want to help me start a veterans organization to oppose the Iraq invasion? And I said, okay, and here we are. Didn't work, we didn't stop it, but we did put on quite a resistance fight, including bringing in people who knew where the weapons of mass destruction were never at. We had everything covered on that. And last year's recipient is another guy who stood up to a wannabe tyrant, Congressman Jamie Raskin. So as you can see, our recipients, our honorees who have graced us with their acceptance of our award are of the highest caliber. And tonight, our next recipient maintains that standard. Oh, excuse me. Yes, thank you, Rich. I forgot. That crazy fool from Texas, Jim Hightower. Well, here's one crazy Texan. If you've ever been to Texas, and I've been there a lot, I was stationed at Hood, Fort Hood. It's a little weird out in Texas. And Jim Hightower fits right in. And because of his Hightower report, Speaking Truth to Power, he was our most recent recipient last year's of the Thomas Paine Award recognition. So that has continued the high standards that we employ in selecting those we ask to accept our recognition. And this year, we got some school guy. What's your name? Tom? I'm not here to present that to him. Our next presenter will be. So if you could take it back over.
Yes,
And thank you very much. And I hope you've enjoyed the party.
Thanks a lot, Dennis. Now what we're going to do is I think I'm bringing up Mike Burns, and he's going to announce the Volunteer of the Year Award, the Volunteer for Florida Veterans for Common Sense.
Thank you. This year, it's a couple. We picked Bob and Peggy Carter to win the Volunteer of the Year Award. Last fall, we started Get Out the Boat project, and we wrote thousands of postcards, and we watched as Peggy and Bob, but mostly Peggy, took the lead in this. They wrote hundreds of them. They'd call me, you got more postcards. They were kind of instrumental in getting this project completed. Unfortunately, it fell short, but the spirit of volunteerism was still there, and we recognized her for that. Bob, in addition, we have microforests. That's our main project now. We're building forests to fight climate change. And Bob has shown up recently as a volunteer. He's my #1 volunteer. I'm sort of in charge of the celery fields. That's where this first microforest started. Bob he does the work of 2 guys. He shows up when he says he's going to. He digs holes. He carries 15-gallon pots around from truck to hole, buries them, nurses them. He's set up his own water schedule to keep the forest, the young trees, the baby trees going. And he's my #1 volunteer out there. And for that, we also recognize him as a Volunteer of the Year Award. May I tell one story about Bob before, one short? Well, Bob was a helicopter pilot in the Vietnam War. He was a dust-off helicopter pilot. Their mission was rescue. They had no guns. They'd fly into a mess, a shootout, a firefight, an ambush. They'd get the call that there's casualties. And these guys would fly out there. They either hovered and would drag up wounded, a sitting target, or they'd fly into a hot zone and listen while the bullets hit their helicopter, waiting for the wounded to get loaded. I know this because my source is Jeffrey Morris, who was a combat medic flew with Bob several times. But the thing about Bob, Jeffrey said, there's this chaos, thunder, different explosions, different kinds of weapons going off, yelling and screaming at this zone. And they have helmets, and they talk electronically to each other, and they could hear Bob's tone, calm, ice. Bob's talking to the radio man, the Marine or the infantry guy that called him down. He's talking to the other helicopters or support. He's talking to the crew. You guys ready back there? The place is rocking with bullets coming through the window. And then they take off, take the wounded to the hospital, come back and do the same thing. That's my #1 volunteer. Shows up. Forgive me if I stepped over a line, Bob, but anyway, I wanted to say that about my friend. Thank you. Sure.
Thank you a lot, Mike. And now it's that very special time for us to toast Thomas Paine with Harvey K. Harvey's in our house. Yeah, Harvey from Wisconsin. And did Harvey give his lecture on Thomas Paine? Yes, he did. Yeah, that's what I thought.
When Jeff called to ask if I would do this, he said I had 3 minutes. I said, give me 10. And oddly enough, I have a toast which will be 3 minutes. So I'm going to use my extra couple of minutes just to tell the story of my first coming. I know I'm not Jesus, okay? It was the fall of 2005, and I get an email from Gene Jones. And he laid out this idea, and I said, can we talk by phone? So that night we had arranged to speak. And in the meantime, I Googled what I could of what I believed to be Florida Veterans for Common Sense to find out the politics of Florida Veterans for Common Sense, which came in very handy for both our purposes. So he called and he said, do I give public lectures? And I said, well, of course. He said, how much do you charge? And I said, how much have you got? And he then told me a story that they had asked or tried to secure a retired general to speak, who I assume was Wesley Clark, but I don't know that for a fact. The point was, he told me that the general wanted $50,000. And I said, I don't charge that much. So then I said, but I'll tell you what. January, which is Thomas Paine's birthday, is actually January 29th, is a terrible time to be in Wisconsin. So here's the deal. Cover my expenses to come down to Sarasota, which I'd never been here. I don't think I'd ever been in Florida other than one time in the Miami International Airport on my way as a high school exchange student to Quito, Ecuador, okay? So I said, so just cover my expenses and give me $1,000 so I can bring my wife, okay? I mean, am I gonna go to Florida in winter alone? No. So I came down and I gave the talk, and they did an impressive job. They literally sold out a 200 plus seat auditorium up by New College, University of South Florida. And I at least had a blast. And as a consequence, for years after, I was coming down, and then the pandemic struck, which is another story. Anyhow, so I was asked by Jeff to give the toast tonight. So I'm going to read. Try not too slowly, but I'm going to read this toast because otherwise I'll go off on a tangent. In December 1776, during the darkest days of the Revolution, Thomas Paine wrote the first of his American crisis papers. Following devastating defeats by British forces in Brooklyn and Manhattan, George Washington and the Continental Army were retreating across New Jersey to the Delaware River and presumably refuge in Pennsylvania. Paine rode with them, determined to continue the fight and defiantly reaffirming his disgust for Great Britain's King George III. Let them call me rebel, he wrote. I feel no concern from it, but I should suffer the misery of devils were I to make a whore of my soul by swearing allegiance to one whose character is that of a sottish, stupid, stubborn, worthless, brutish man. And I said I wouldn't say this, but it sounds familiar to me somehow. Paine, the greatest writer of the Revolution, knew how to call out the enemy. Only 11 months earlier, he had published Common Sense, a pamphlet of just 50 pages that would turn the world upside down. calling on Americans to recognize that they were Americans, not Britons, and that they were fighting not for British rights, but for universal human rights, Paine, through words such as "the sun never shined on a cause of greater worth," and "we have it in our power to begin the world over again," emboldened his fellow citizens to turn their colonial rebellion into a revolutionary war for not only independence, but also the making of a democratic republic. Now, however, it seemed America's cause would collapse on the frozen fields of Tory-dominated New Jersey, which is actually my home state, and I always hesitate to admit it, but yes, New Jersey was Tory-dominated. I'll also tell you very quickly that Benjamin Franklin's son was the Tory governor of New Jersey, which is one of the reasons that Ben Franklin was known to have said that Paine is my adopted political son. But encouraged by George Washington himself, Paine began to write again. And on a drumhead by campfire light, he penned words that would reinvigorate the struggle and resound through the generations. "These are the times that try men's souls," he begins. "The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will in this crisis shrink from the service of their country. But he that stands by it now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered. Yet we have this consolation with us: the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph." And here we are today, 17 months away from the 250th anniversary of the United States of America, facing our own times that try men's and women's souls. Sadly, we do not yet have our own Thomas Paine, but we do have his words to inspire and encourage us. Indeed, let them call us rebels, for we are all the heirs of Thomas Paine. And in that spirit, let us raise our glasses and drink both to the greatest revolutionary of a revolutionary age and to those who are neither summer soldiers nor sunshine patriots. That is, the men and women of Florida veterans for common sense. Thank you. Yep, I gotta make sure I don't walk with my glasses on. Thank you.
And now is the time. I'd like to present to you the man that some of us truly, truly admire, and as Dennis would say, the man we can make fun of as well. Our President, Gene Jones.
Thank everybody for being here tonight. This is really special that you're all here to show support for our group, and give yourselves a big hand of applause. It's really appreciated. Sitting with Anthony, he reminded me of something tonight. We're not only celebrating Thomas Paine's birthday, but this is the anniversary of the first Gulf War invasion. And as you know, a lot of the soldiers in that war were exposed to toxins and other harmful things, which has really made them suffer. And a lot of them are no longer with us. I mean, a lot of them have all kinds of cancers and problems, you name it. And so we need to think about them tonight as well, since it is the anniversary. And we also need to recognize that our government is not supporting them like they should. Anthony Hardy and Florida Veterans for Common Sense, they work very hard to set up a suicide hotline for these soldiers that need help, that may be suffering from PTSD. Well, guess what this administration and the billionaires are doing? They're shutting it down. They're not able to operate that like they should. And they want to do what? Privatize it so they can make money. So I just want people to know that. And thank you for being here and supporting us. Tonight, we have the great honor to present the Thomas Paine Award to Tom Edwards. As you see from the program, the award puts Tom among very esteemed persons who in one way or another stand in the legacy of our hero, Thomas Paine. Dennis talked about some of these special people, but I'd like to mention a little more detail about Waldo Prophet, because Waldo was very special to us. He was an electronic war specialist in World War II, flying in B-25s. By the way, one of the most dangerous jobs in World War II. In the Korean War, he was recalled, and his job then was to communicate new weapon systems and that type of thing to commanders around the world. After discharge, he served as the editor of the Sarasota Herald Tribune, which became the foremost environmental newspaper in Florida. At that time, the biggest threat to Sarasota's environment was probably phosphate mining. And thanks to Waldo Prophet and his publisher, Lindsay, they were able to keep phosphate mining out of Sarasota County. Waldo understood that good government requires a free press. He said a free press is an essential factor in the democratic government, and the most important role of the press is to keep its readers informed about what is going on in government. And we certainly need good newspapers and media today. Waldo Prophet was so respected by his colleagues that journalism awards are made in his name. Both Paine and Prophet were editors and editorialists who advanced the promise of America. Each and every Tom Paine Award winner has done so in his own way. Tom Edwards stands with Paine and other award winners with a character legacy and the commitment to good government and a better America by his service on the Sarasota County School Board. To understand how important the school board is to our community, you should know some details about it. They're really astonishing. The district educates over 45,000 students at 56 different schools, including special schools and charter schools. It employs nearly 2,500 people and is the second largest employer in the county. It's a big business. The budget is over $1.35 billion. It's a restaurant. Over 5 million meals are served annually. It's a police force. There are 69 sworn police officers. It's a transportation enterprise with more than 320 buses traveling over 4.2 million miles each year. It's a Tower of Babel. There's over 60 languages spoken in the district. There's 67 school districts in the state. We can be proud that Sarasota has always ranked as an A district since the rating system was started in 2004. This last year, it ranked second in the state, and Pineview School was ranked the best public school in the state of Florida by U.S. News and World Report. Managing our complex district to maintain a high level of excellence is a Herculean task. One has to have undaunted courage to take it on. Most people, as we know, in this area would rather be out at the beach or playing golf. Thankfully, we have Tom Edwards, who has the expertise, outlook, and grit to take on the job. His background as a businessman and entrepreneur gives him the skills to properly oversee the district's money to keep it financially secure. Of course, that benefits us all because it keeps our taxes lower. We have no doubt that he has grit, and this is an interesting circumstance about Tom. He's a master rower, and that's a really, really tough sport. It demands a high level of physical endurance, muscular strength, technical skill, and most of all, it takes mental fortitude. To be successful, rowers must push their bodies to the limit, and many consider rowing to be one of the most difficult sports in the Olympics. But it's a good thing that Tom is tough. In Sarasota County, almost 60% of the voters are Republican. When he ran for the school board in 2020, he was a registered Democrat. Odds against him. Nevertheless, he won, although he was attacked by mudslinging extremists and the governor. Plus, he was attacked by the governor, but the voters returned him to office in 2024 with a larger margin than his win in the 2020 election, and that's because he does such a good job. But his political victories are not why Tom Edwards deserves our Thomas Paine Award. He deserves it because he does what is right and his right-minded philosophy. He works to protect public education with a commitment to the students, the teachers, and the families all day, all the time, with a focus on high-achieving student outcomes while always maintaining budget compliance. Tom Edwards wants a school district that has a best place to work environment with high employee morale. Now, how would you like to be working for the federal government right now? Compare that morale. He wants every student to excel and to graduate with some plan for the future, whether that be college admission, military service, employment. Tom is proactive. He was instrumental in creating and funding a new program, and this is very special, the Construction Trades Academy, to help meet the workforce needs of the community. Tom Edwards has an ethical consciousness that we should all emulate, despite the fact the school board in our polarized climate has been dysfunctional at times. Is that an understatement? Tom never lost faith. He still engages the whole community, even with those who are disrespectful and censorious. And believe me, we have some of those in Sarasota County. Tom doesn't let pettiness and sanctimoniousness stop him from pushing forward to make Sarasota the best school district in the state and Sarasota public schools the best in the county. His persistence builds trust. Tom Edwards actualizes Thomas Paine's thinking, who Tom Paine advocated for universal education, as we heard tonight, which he saw as essential for empowering citizens to participate fully in self-government. Paine viewed public education as necessary to combat ignorance and to ensure an informed and engaged populace. Likewise, Tom Edwards believes education is transformative for the individual and the community. Thomas Paine would be proud to know that our 2025 Thomas Paine Award goes to Tom Edwards, an ambassador for public education. Both Toms believe that public education is essential for community well-being and progress. Tom Edwards strives to protect and improve our public schools from political interference and privatization. Let's all show our patriotism and appreciation for Tom as he comes forward to give us a few words about the school board and himself. Tom, please come forward.
Wow, who is that guy? Just to get started, I want to say to be among that list of honorees is humbling in and of itself. So I want to start by saying thank you. When I first was told of this award, it was before the presidential election. And it was before the military firings that took place this past Friday. I had planned a very different acceptance speech. So let me take just a few moments and speak about what I had previously wanted to share. Receiving the Thomas Paine Award for courage from the Florida Veterans for Common Sense is the most humbling acknowledgement of my work as a school board member. I became a school board candidate in the first place because I flunked retirement. I thought I would be the only member with a business entrepreneurial background that would complement an academic culture, providing fresh eyes for the student continuing education programs and an oversight of the budget, thus providing fresh eyes for the whole system. As soon as I was elected, the political environment that we are still grappling with today exploded. Mask policies, Moms for Liberty, book banning, don't say gay, revisions of Black history, stop woke, and attacks on our teachers' codes of ethics are just some of the topics du jour that we discussed for the first 2 years of my tenure. All of that culminated in the firing of a beloved superintendent. Here is the part I'm most anxious to share with you. My grandfather was a veteran. He served in the Navy during World War II. I guess that makes him a squid. I am not a veteran. I was the first high school class that was not required to register for the draft due to the conclusion of the Vietnam War. My grandfather was my paternal influencer as a youngster, and I adored him. He was a Depression baby that found himself head of household at the age of 11, responsible for a mother, a sister, a cousin, and a special needs niece. He taught me one simple phrase into my adolescence. Quote, "It is never wrong to do the right thing." So as an inexperienced school board member, elected official, thrust into the world of politics, I remembered that phrase as I spoke, as I cast my votes, as I championed our students, and as I defended our teachers. So while you cite my courage, I attribute this award to my grandfather, the veteran, because by honoring me, you honor him. And for that, I am humbled. Here's the part I didn't plan to speak on. And a phrase that we've heard a couple of times tonight, to steal a line from Thomas Paine, these are the times that try men's souls. One thing I don't often share publicly is my empathy for the rank and file MAGA team, the everyday John and Jane Red Hats. Back in the 80s, when Reagan broke the unions and manufacturing was offshored, that portion of the middle class was abandoned by both parties. That is an area in the Midwest that I grew up. I know those people, and they were loyal Union Democrats. Their struggle became their children's struggles. So now we have two generations angry at the government, and they are the base of the MAGA movement. 2 years ago, I attended a lecture by the famous journalist Tom Friedman. And in that lecture, he aptly pointed out that until the centrists, which is the largest portion of our electorate, are unified behind one leader, we will remain divided by extremists. And those extremists can lead us to the threshold of fascism. I took that message to heart, and I campaigned accordingly. I never referred to the right or the left, to Democrats or Republicans. I spoke of our shared common values, which in my case was a safe, high-achieving, academic environment for all students. My reelection was solidified by that 58% of the electorate. Please take heed to this message, and here's why. You, our esteemed veterans, have faced adversity on the front lines, enduring hardships and making sacrifices that many of us can only imagine. The brutality and the complete disrespect associated to Friday's terminations of the military leadership has not gone unnoticed by me as nothing short of a military coup. My question is, will the military follow the chain of command, or will they defend their oath to the Constitution? Or can it be both? Finding a way to talk to our voting adversaries will be essential to retaining our democracy. Our shared common values stem from generations of veterans and their service. The fight for freedom and the oath to our Constitution are our shared common values that can keep us bonded and able to survive this money and power grab by the new federal government. I leave you with the most recent words and a grateful thank you from the governor of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker. These words are, tyranny requires your fear and your silence and your compliance. Democracy requires your courage. So gather your justice and humanity and do not let the tragic spirit of despair overcome us when our country needs us the most. Thank you so much for listening.
You see why we awarded this Thomas Paine Award to Tom Edwards, and let me read to you what it says on the plaque. The legacy of Thomas Paine, in the legacy of Thomas Paine, Tom Edwards is a voice of reason on the Sarasota County School Board. He has a proven track record of standing up for democratic values with integrity, intelligence, and innovation that prevents the weak from being prey of the strong. So let's hear it for Tom.
How about a little round of applause also for Gene Jones? We're going to do our 50-50. If there's anybody else that would like to drop a couple dollars in the 50-50, he's right over here. And she's walking around over there. So if you want to just go on in. And then we're going to 50-50 it. I think you heard our air conditioning. Or was that rain? So since there is a little bit of wet timing going on outside, I was thinking that maybe, you think I could ask somebody who knows a lot about common sense in the national level, might want to come up and say something. I mean, I didn't even know he was going to be here. So that's fabulous. What do you think? Would it make, well, he wants to buy raffle first. Go ahead. Again, thank you all for being here. It's a most amazing opportunity for us to be able to share this award with Tom Edwards. And you heard what a fabulous man he is. And now, Anthony, the national president of the Common Sense, Veterans for Common Sense.
Thank you very much. It's really a pleasure, especially among friends tonight. And it's great to, it's been a tough year. It's been a there's been a lot going on in my personal life as well with some losses, and but it's really nice to walk into a room and just see so many good friends and so many incredible people that really represent not just this community, but the ideals that this country was founded on. So really, really grateful for you. I was not prepared to come up here tonight. I have absolutely no prepared comments, so I'm just going to wing it and see if there's something that I could share. As Gene mentioned, it is the 34th anniversary of the 1991 Gulf War. I'm a veteran of that war. Any other Gulf War veterans in the room tonight? How about Vietnam veterans? I know there's quite a few Vietnam veterans in the room. Yep, thank you. So what a lot of folks don't know is that when Gulf War veterans came home from the 1991 Gulf War and were suffering from a lot of health issues, Vietnam veterans stood behind Gulf War veterans and supported. And the motto of the National Vietnam Veteran Organization, Vietnam Vets of America, is never again shall one generation of veterans abandon another. And that motto came about from the experience that they had when they came home and were not accepted or recognized and had a lot of serious health issues. A lot of PTSD wasn't even recognized yet. It was through the work of Vietnam veterans that PTSD was recognized for Vietnam veterans, for all veterans, and for all of humanity. So pretty significant achievements there as well. Vietnam veterans also worked on issues related to Agent Orange and toxic exposures. That led in turn to assisting Gulf War veterans, and together we worked together to pass the Persian Gulf War Veterans Acts of 1998 that were modeled after the Vietnam Veterans Acts that were passed in 1991. Congress seems to be really good at recognizing generations of veterans right about the time there's a new generation of veterans that's being created. So 1991 was our war, but that's how long it took to help with Vietnam veterans. Vietnam veterans were also instrumental in the Honoring Our Pact Act, which I had the privilege of being involved with, helping to create the list of conditions that never goes far enough, but it's certainly better than, in all the time in Washington, I've learned that a half a loaf is far better than no loaf. And even if you get crumbs, it's better than nothing. And then you keep coming back. And so the list of conditions for presumptive conditions for a veteran's disability continues to grow. That's a testament to the past administration for their commitment. I don't think it's any coincidence that former President Joe Biden, that his son, Bo Biden, who was himself an Iraq War veteran and passed of a brain cancer that was likely due to his own toxic exposures. I don't think it's any coincidence that that president helped to enact the most sweeping legislation for toxic exposure that's ever been passed in the history of this country. We hear those kinds of phrases often under this administration, but this one happens to be true. That legislation also helped to enact sweeping healthcare improvements for a lot of toxic exposed veterans, particularly those from the Iraq War and the Afghanistan War. Millions of veterans who served, and countless among them are suffering from the toxic exposure effects of burn pits and a number of other toxic exposures. So keeping those in mind as well is absolutely critical. I had the privilege of speaking at a conference earlier this afternoon that's focused on toxic exposures, and the message was about advocacy and the necessity of advocacy. And I suppose I'll just close with this: that when we were soldiers, the title of the book, I guess, goes, "We were soldiers once and young." And we had this impression that the pay raises that came, they were just automatic. They came out of Washington and couldn't really understand what was a big deal. And it turns out that all of that happens through the advocacy of organizations that support the military and that support veterans. And in fact, everything that happens for our veterans and for our troops and everything that's happening really in Washington is through the advocacy of a lot of people. Big organizations, small organizations, and everyday people like those of us in this room. Many of you represent organizations big and small. Many of you are elected or appointed officials, or have been in the past, or continue to serve in that important role. And nothing happens without advocacy. And that advocacy is fueled by everyday people, like the people in this room. That was the message of my talk earlier today, and I'll just close with that: is that nothing happens without us raising our voices in the spirit of Thomas Paine and the spirit of what this country is founded on. So anyway, again, it's wonderful to be among friends. Thanks for putting me on the spot. Happy to be here tonight. And I'm going to head back to my chair and we'll see who comes up next. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody.